Let's try to take an objective look at political parties, which are groups that seek to elect candidates to public office by supplying them with a label. That label, as a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, supplies to the minds of the voters an idea of what that candidate stands for, even if they don't exactly know and haven't boned up on what the candidate stands for. That party label is important as a cue to the voters. Parties also organize for recruiting and campaigning to get their party members elected, which is the only way they're going to be able to control the executive and legislative branches, and of course as a set of leaders in government. European parties are much more centralized. European parties control the nomination, they elect officials to vote the party line, compulsory dues are paid by party members. In contrast, American political parties are quite decentralized. Oftentimes, the parties are unimportant to the average citizen. More than 40% of American citizens consider themselves to be independent. The founders disliked the idea of factions, which was what they would have called political parties. By the time of Andrew Jackson as president, the age of democracy had fostered caucuses to spread out and get the citizens more involved using flour barrel politics to get candidates elected. Republicans had taken a hold of the slavery issue. In 1856, by 1860, with Abraham Lincoln, they won the presidency, split the Democratic Party, and from then on, the Republicans took the birthplace of their party from Abraham Lincoln. The progressives in the late 1800s pushed measures to curtail party politics, bringing in the primaries, getting even more citizens involved in getting candidates on the ballot, the Pendleton Act, which stopped political machines from offering jobs, and then using the initiative referendum and recall, citizens had more control of their state legislatures. Next two slides you may want to pause. Looking at these graphs, you can see that anytime the major parties, the Democrats and Republicans, split, as you can see, for example, in 1860 with the Democrats, the other party is going to take control for at least 10 years of the White House and the Congress, which gives a lot of incentive to the parties not to split, to stay centrist. Same thing happens here, you notice, in 1948 with the Democrats. State and local parties are key organizations. What you have is what's oftentimes called the political machine, whereby the political machine recruits voters, offering tangible incentives, even money, bribes, jobs, favors, whatever is necessary to get them to the polling booth and get their vote. Abuses of the political machine are now controlled by the Hatch Act, which doesn't allow local organizations and local governments to offer incentives to voters. It's jobs at local level are everything's by merit instead of what you might do for a political party. Political machines are always self-serving, and again, we haven't seen such since Chicago politics in the 50s and 60s. Ideological parties are contentious. They hold principle above everything else. Oftentimes, they're the third parties, and they make the Democrats and Republicans take on some of their ideas so that they can be centrist. Examples of ideological parties would be Right to Life parties, the Greens for the environment. Solidarity parties are members in solidarity parties are motivated by social enjoyment and friends more than anything else. They're not very hardworking. Examples might be the Social Democrats, still on the ballot sometimes, but they just don't work hard enough to be able to get their members voted into office. Sponsored parties are created or sustained by another organization, oftentimes trade unions back maybe 30, 40 years ago. Examples would have been Detroit United Auto Workers controlling the Democrats. You can look at today and make an argument that the Florida A controlling Florida GOP politics, controlling the Florida Republicans. Personal following of party members. You had the Huey Longs in the South in 1930s and 40s. The Kennedys, as a family, have controlled politics on the East Coast for generations. You can look at the Bushes controlling Republican politics in Texas and the South. Two-party system is really rare in Republican governments in the world. Today, the two parties are evenly balanced nationally, but not locally. Wyoming, Utah, North Dakota are predominantly Republican because of their conservative political cultures. The West Coast, California, Oregon, and Washington are primarily liberal and Democrat because of their political culture. Massachusetts would be an example of a very liberal state that has always voted Democrat. You have a permanent fixture of these two-party systems because of electoral laws and public opinion. The electoral laws favor keeping the two-party system intact, and third parties oftentimes don't have a chance of getting on the ballot because of what you have, what are called single-member districts, where you only have one member of a party that can be elected, and a plurality to win, that you only have to have the most number of votes, not a majority. Therefore, somebody can get 39% of the ballot and think that they have a mandate to rule. When you nominate a president as a party, the convention delegates, it's a party tool to get delegates on the ballot for the November ballot. Democratic delegates are much more liberal. The Republican GOP delegates are much more conservative. Primaries and caucuses are two means by which to get candidates on the ballot in November. You have an open primary where anybody can vote regardless of party. A closed primary used in 39 states, including Wyoming, you have to declare your party before given a ballot in the primary. Free love is only in Alaska. You can go in and you can vote for either party's ballot going back and forth. Caucuses, like in Wyoming, for president and in Iowa for all levels of government, overrepresent the activist opinion. Caucuses require those who attend the caucuses to take time and effort, and caucuses show more of the party activists. Do the parties differ? Well, Governor George Wallace one time said that there's not a dime's bit of difference between the two parties. Some differences do exist between their party rank and file. Activist leaders and party officials toe the party line. But in general, people as Americans don't consider themselves hard party members. In order to get the ballot, candidates need to be more liberal or conservative to win the nomination, but more centrist to win the election in the popular vote.